Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back on another video from Any News, continuing with the good content for Overlord Season 4. This is episode 4, part 2. So we went into all the lore and everything in part 1, and this one, it's the fight against the Warrior King, which I really liked. I mentioned it in the last one. Swan gave a brief description in the comments. I want to understand the whole thing that happened in the fight. I hope he explains it, where he's told no magic, and to me, it seemed like he's using magic all over the bloody show. So let's see what the actual thing going on with that one was, shall we?
The majority of Ainz's fight was exactly how we saw.
Such a good fight as well.
Element the anime couldn't quite show us was just how prepared he was. From the very moment Ainz stepped
He had it all sorted, didn't he?
He was already taking steps to make victory more attainable.
Oh, okay.
It was subtle moves like taunts and mind games that really went to highlight just how serious Ainz took his PvP.
Okay.
So, just like I promised, let's finish off this episode and see how Ainz versus the Warrior King went in the novels.
So.
Episode 43, Part 2.
Part 2!
The Sorcerer King versus the Martial
Hell
King.
yeah, let's do this.
Starting things off with Ainz's initial challenge request, we find out that Gougen is only the strongest in the warrior division. Due to a previous match where mages just flew around shooting arrows and spells,
oh,
the
right.
battle it created resulted in things like fly and teleport being prohibited.
Okay.
It was the only time Gougen had found himself losing. Now, a major factor causing Osk to be so reluctant was the potential damage to his reputation should an allied king get injured because of
Oh, imagine. Oh yeah, I never thought about that.
Allied nations king to get hurt. So,
wait, if this guy gets hurt, I am in trouble.
Osk first demanded some form of collateral. He requested a weapon similar to what Ainz had just given Ainzak. This wasn't something that Ainz could give him right away, but he did agree and planned to have it delivered tomorrow. When Ainz went on to talk about his mass-killing spell next, aside from the fact that the 10-year cooldown was a lie, it actually wasn't something he felt comfortable casting in the capital at all. Despite his impartial feelings towards anyone not from Nazarick, the amount of death it would cause was well past the line of what he was okay with.
Yeah,
it was a small
bit extreme,
of whatever lingering sense of humanity he had left. Now, when Ainz had agreed to restrict
his costume's so cool.
There was actually quite a bit of pushback from Ainzak. You see, even with Ainz saying that he was fine with it, Ainzak still opposed the choice since Ainz had yet to see what the Martial King was capable of.
Yeah, like, dude, you don't know what he can do. He's the Warrior King.
Here was actually quite refreshing. No one in Nazarick had ever gone to express their opinion the way that Ainzak did. It was a plea of
and that's why Ainz likes having him around, though, doesn't he?
In any case,
he told him to actually tell him what he's thinking.
Something rather interesting to say. Part of the reason he was so proud of Gougen was because, as a person who had no aptitude for combat yet carried quite the passion for it, creating a warrior to fight for him was the closest thing he could get
Right.
to. Sure, if he could have, he would have worked hard to make himself that warrior, but the body he possessed simply wasn't capable of it.
Then work out.
So, what Osk instead was create a warrior who represented him. That way he could.
That's what I did until I cracked my ribs and then I've got fat again because I can't run.
But the expression of
Give it another
satisfaction
week.
Osk was making right now made Ainz feel as if Osk had some sort of weird fetish with this. Even more so when Osk had said how if Ainz lost it would feel amazing for him. Now, a comment like this would have made anyone retort with one of their own, but when Ainz didn't respond with anything at all, that just left Osk and Ainzak feeling confused. They looked as if they were expecting him to say something more. But in the classic Overlord fashion, Ainz was more confused than either of them.
Of course, he never knows what's going on, really, does he?
He wanted to say something, but pressing any more than he did would just diminish his position as ruler. It would start to make him seem quite foolish. So, what Ainz did instead was simply accept that this was how humans and society worked. He understood that if those without power revealed too much of their honest feelings, then it was only a matter of time until they'd be silenced for them, leading Ainz to just move on and end the conversation with the final details of the fight. Fast forward now to that exact day, and it's before the fight that we learn a bit more about Gougen. You see, as a war troll with innate strengths that made him powerful, Gougen had easily become the strongest warrior king in all of history.
I mean, look at him.
Not only did he possess tough skin and enchanted armor, but his inherent ability to regenerate was the toughest obstacle for all his opponents. Unless they were equipped with some form of acid or fire, making any
the
sort
poison
of
in that,
lasting
it's like
damage on
boom.
Gougen was impossible. Combine this with a magic ring and magic amulet, and what you get is a first-class warrior who's practically undefeatable.
Oh.
Now, part of what made Gougen's words so sentimental here was the fact that Osk had only ever heard it 3 times before. It was a rare occurrence
When he
that
gave
showed
him his
just
weapon,
how
when he gave him his
excited
armor,
Gougen was
after the
this.
fight with his strongest
Not
opponent.
only was
Wow,
he
okay, cool.
excited, though, but he was also trembling in fear over the opponent he was about to face. Every one of his natural instincts was telling him that this battle would be his last. If he got up and entered the arena, Gougen knew eventually
Ainz.
the only thing awaiting him there was death. But even so, Gougen saw this as the perfect opportunity to test himself. You see, despite being the strongest to ever enter the arena, Gougen knew all his strength came from the characteristics of his race. It wasn't because he was skilled or superior in combat, but instead simply because he was built different.
Oh.
Now that Osk had brought him someone his instincts were telling him to run from, though, Gougen could
The ultimate
finally test
challenge.
his true ability.
Oh.
It was the very thing he needed to confirm whether he was truly strong or not. And that was the final promise Gougen was grateful for. Now, if you're wondering how these two had met, well, that's a story that goes back a decade. It was 10 years ago that a powerful monster had appeared at the Imperial frontier.
Okay.
Not only was this monster said to be somewhat intelligent, but it was also said to not kill anyone who cast their weapons aside. A rather absurd rumor that had gone to pique Osk's curiosity. So, when Osk heard that Footer would be sent to exterminate it shortly, Osk knew that he had to get there first. The thing is, it was when he finally did that he found himself too terrified to move. Only after Gougen glanced at him then looked away did Osk come to realize that the rumors were true. This monster was very clearly uninterested in him. So, with that being the green light to proceed as planned, Osk went and asked the monster a question. A question it responded to by saying it wanted to get stronger. It was as soon as that response was given that everything Osk had dreamed for was suddenly now attainable.
Yeah.
Standing before
The
him
warrior
was the very
that I
thing
can
Osk could
use.
train to become his standing
Yeah.
warrior. The monster that would fight in his place so that he would know what victory tasted like.
Cool.
It didn't make much sense to Osk at the time, but the gamble he'd taken with Gougen had very clearly paid off now. Both him and his stand-in were now the champions of the arena. That being the case, it was only natural for Osk to be worried for him. I mean, after 10 long years of dominating the arena, the thought of it all coming to an end was at the very least troubling.
Yeah.
Of course, Osk couldn't express those feelings to Gougen, but he truly was fearful that he would lose his friend today, leading him to only say those final words that we saw
Don't
at the end.
lose, King.
What the anime didn't show us after this, though, was a final warning about Ainz's magic items, along with an earnest thought to lighten the mood a bit. It was a throwback to a next-of-kin discussion Osk had tried to have before. It's not really all that important, but apparently Osk did find a human candidate willing to mate with Gougen.
Oh.
Partly to become Gougen's wife, and partly to ensure a child that Osk could train for the future.
And carry on.
Surprisingly enough, though, a human wife wasn't
Interesting.
even something that Gougen was interested in. No, aside from the fact that it likely wasn't even possible, he instead insisted that he'd find a wife that was his own race. Perhaps someone from the village he came from. Switching over to Ainz now, part of the reason he was so confident in his ability was because he was certain he was the strongest that he could be right now. After killing over 100,000 people in the massacre, even if each were only worth 1 experience point a body, the sheer number of them would definitely have been enough to level him up if he was capable.
Right.
But because nothing had happened, Ainz knew for sure he was the strongest that he could possibly be.
Oh, okay.
What he felt he could do instead, though, was refine his technique in other areas. Sure, his magic was certainly incomparable to anyone else, but if we're talking about his frontline skills as a warrior, then that was definitely lacking. After having fought so poorly against Clementine, Ainz knew he needed to work on his melee combat.
So he thought he fought
assumed that with
poorly.
his current ability, technique, and strategy, his overall level as a specialized warrior would be at most 33.
Interesting.
So, having the opportunity to fight an expert like Gougen
Wasn't that the person that he
by
crushed
far
to
the best
death?
way to test that. Now, there was something that did bring worry to Ainz's mind, and that was the fact that Jerkniv would be watching him. Ainz had hoped that Jerkniv wouldn't be in attendance, but the fact that he was made Ainz feel as if Jerkniv knew he was coming before him.
And it's so funny because it's worked the other way around. They were like, wait a minute, he knew we were coming here the whole time. It's like, nope, he didn't know.
Resulting in a feeling of guilt which led him to go say hi. If he
Oh!
to the Emperor who was supposed to be his ally, then Ainz knew that that would only leave an even worse impression of himself.
That's so different.
So that was the actual reason behind Ainz's masterful play against Jerkniv.
Yo!
Now,
He
once
literally
he
just
made
wanted to
the
say hello.
The equipment Ainz had brought with him was
That was
his
cool.
caster build would allow him to. Aside from several weak
Holy
staves and
crap.
daggers, his choice for physical attacks was this staff, a weak item he'd crafted back in his Yggdrasil days.
Oh.
Of course, Ainz could have just crafted a far more optimized weapon, but considering the disparity in power between himself and his opponent, it was only fair that he only use items already available to him.
Right.
A decision that went against every teaching he had learned as a player in Yggdrasil. As for Gougen, the equipment he wore did match the description that Footer had given him, but Ainz knew it was foolish to assume that it had the same stats. Reason being that back in Yggdrasil, it was very common for PvPers to create a set of gear that looked the same, but was actually loaded with a set of data completely different from the original.
Okay.
It was a minor bluff that carried significant impact.
That's clever.
Leading Ainz to observe every aspect of Goguen closely. When he saw just how interesting Goguen was, the demand he made for him to become his subject after was immediately followed by a reminder for him to accept his resurrection.
Don't refuse resurrection.
Should
I kill you.
Ainz end up killing Goguen in the arena, then the choice to be brought back to life rested with Goguen alone. It would be
I kind of like that they didn't throw that in the anime, because it came as a surprise to me that when he did it...
Simply because Goguen didn't accept his resurrection offer. Now, a quick advantage Ainz had tried to gain in the beginning was a slight antagonization attempt regarding their starting distance. You see, by accepting a starting distance that was within Goggen's attack range, Ainz was basically giving him a handicap. He was trying to get under Goggen's skin by expressing his underestimation of him. What went to impress Ainz even more, though, was that Goguen remained completely calm regardless. He was fully composed even with Ainz provoking him. So, after the bell had rung, Jerknev's initial cheers against him had actually made Ainz quite amused. He began to think his friend more fun than he thought he was, and that in turn led his perception of him to increase to even higher than it was before. Before, he saw him more as this perfect emperor, but now he seemed like someone he could easily get along with. Ainz sensed an affinity between the two of them that just made Jerknev seem relatable. Getting back to the fight now,
But then Jerknev's like, come on, Warrior King, beat him!
actually dealt a significant amount of damage to him. Though the pain was brief, the fact remained that he did very much feel it. When Ainz followed up with the negative energy attack of his own, he had also gone to use Goggen's ignorance against him. You see, he had made him think that if Ainz continued to touch him, then eventually the debuff would stack until he couldn't even move anymore. But while this debuff did continuously take away from his strength and agility, it would never actually make his stats hit zero. So yes, Goggen would get weaker, but the prospect of him eventually not being able to move was a small bluff Ainz added in to increase the pressure on him, making this the second time he had gone to do this. When Ainz had said that he was an immensely powerful race of undead, that was his first attempt to make Goggen anxious. So not only was Ainz increasing his advantage through attacks that countered his race, but he was also using his words to get into Goggen's head. A major
Manipulation of the mind, love it.
Trying to filter through the other's deceptions. Now, the reason Ainz didn't follow up with another attack after was because he couldn't rule out the possibility that Goggen was intentionally letting his guard down.
Yeah,
It was very
trying to
possible
trick him
he just
into a false sense of
waiting
security there.
waiting for Ainz to get close. So, after a period of close observation, Ainz continued his assault with Clementine stilettos now. And while he wasn't
they're her weapons,
the most he could copy was her running style. He
Right.
wasn't even able to replicate the agile dodges that she
Didn't clock
used.
onto that at all, interesting.
What he could do to make up for that, though, was implement a skill which would make Goggen's attacks slower. You see, by using Despair Aura 1 to cause a delay between Goggen's brain and his physical action, Ainz could instill a brief type of stasis that would make dodging simple. So, despite Goggen's club making a course straight for Ainz's chest, the hesitation caused by fear allowed Ainz to dodge then connect with his own attack.
Yo.
One that was followed by an immediate release of magic spells for the
Oh, just like, wow,
While this was
okay, that's really cool.
the other two stilettos were meant to be fatal. You see, as a precaution in case Goggen was immune to fire, Ainz had also gotten Fuder to enchant these other two with acid magic. It was a surefire method to kill Goggen should the circumstances call for it. So, after Goggen's last counterattack against Ainz, he had dropped his armor in hopes of using his increased speed to end it. Sure, it was useful in blocking the stiletto's attacks, but because there was nothing he could do about the debuffs, Goggen felt it was best to just ditch it. That way he could do one last barrage of attacks and try to finish off whatever little HP he thought Ainz had left. When Ainz walked through all his attacks as if they were nothing, though, that's when Goggen came to understand their true difference in power. What Ainz simply
Like, oh god.
attributed to a mass disparity in their HP, Goggen could only see it as him being weak. So, with no choice but to accept his fate, Ainz unleashed the acid spell which killed Goggen instantly, thus bringing an end to the fight between the Sorcerer King and the Warrior King. Now, one last thing to quickly mention after is the comedic level of anxiety Ainz had prior to resurrecting Goggen. I mean, as an entity who was just declaring how he could defy death itself, it would have been pretty embarrassing if he couldn't prove it. That's why Ainz's non-existent heart was pounding in the moments leading up to it.
Oh mate, can you imagine?
Yeah.
I even bring this guy back to life and then he doesn't. Oh no.
It was a pretty faithful adaptation of what was
Cool.
otherwise an epic battle. There was a bit more to be said about Jerkniv's demoralization after, but the essence of his downfall was captured about as well as you could expect it.
Sweet, okay, cool.
So I think that's where I'm going to end up leaving things. If you enjoyed what you saw, then be sure to leave a like and comment. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time.
Ciao. Awesome, love it. Love the little subtle differences that there were with that. That was brilliant. I like the whole thing that he never planned to go see Jerkniv, but because Jerkniv was there, he felt like he had to be like, oh, I have to say hello, be rude not to, and then everyone in the meeting's like, oh, you planned this the whole time. He's a genius, my god. That's brilliant. I'm loving Overlord, and I'm loving these videos, and yeah, absolutely awesome stuff. So anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, $1 a month is all I ask to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys very much for that. And a very special thank you to Snidely Whiplash, who is currently donating $50 a month to the Patreon channel page. Amazing. Thank you very much for that. Greatly appreciated. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos, and I'll see you guys, or you guys, next time.